Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by again. Look, today we have some big polling news. Monmouth University released their poll, and they show massive shifts in the Democratic primary. At the top, Joe Biden's support has cratered. He's down about 13 points to 19%, whereas Sanders and Warren are up 6 and 5% respectively to tie in first place at 20. This effectively means that according to Monmouth at least, again, this is one of the better pollsters that's covering this race. According to them, it's now a three-way race between Biden, Sanders, and Warren, all effectively tied. That's all well within the margin of error. Going further down the list, you see people like Kamala Harris at 8%, and then no one else above 5. You have some candidates that are shifting around down there. Beto O'Rourke has fallen quite a bit. He's now below some of the candidates that were considered also-rans before he was. But on the whole, it's now a three-person race according to this poll. And this is such an important poll because it shows, I feel, the new narratives that are developing in the race. And for so long, it was Biden's to lose, but Biden has been losing it. Biden has no real policy that he's offering, from my perspective at least, that can speak to the needs and hopes and desires and concerns of the Democratic base. He just isn't offering it. You can add to all that Biden's extremely problematic record as a legislator, as somebody who has had for most of his career very conservative views that have no place in representing what is a party moving in a progressive direction. You also have Biden as a gaffe machine. Look, every politician makes gaffes. Young and old, men, women, it doesn't matter. They all have gaffes. But Biden just time and time again over the last few weeks has been, just mistaking places, mistaking decades, mistaking times, mistaking people. It's been really, really troubling, and it makes you think maybe he's not ready for prime time. You add into that Barack Obama's recent claims to Joe Biden saying, Joe, you don't have to do this, sort of in a polite way, maybe discouraging Joe Biden from running, saying he's worried about what this will do to Joe Biden's legacy. He's worried that Joe Biden just doesn't have the energy behind himself and his team to make this happen. And I think in all of that whole context, it's no wonder that Joe Biden's tanking support. And this notes that his support's not just tanking amongst one group, it's tanking amongst women and men and white people and non-white people. His support is plummeting rather uniformly, which shows me that it's a general growing dissatisfaction with Joe Biden. And with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, the growth isn't as high as Biden's fall, but it's notable. And Sanders and Warren, I think, are both succeeding because they represent a progressive movement in the Democratic Party. Now, they do so in very different ways, not only in the people that support them, but in how they approach politics. And I think that it's no surprise that they are perhaps the two most progressive candidates, and they're doing well in a time where people are aching for progressive policy. But it does show me that they have different approaches that are both popular. Warren is a bit more of a traditional politician. She has a lot of support amongst highly educated people. I think she has great plans, but the emphasis with her is, look, we're going to do things by the book, and we're going to get it done, and we're going to build a more just and fair society. And there's nothing wrong with that. But Bernie Sanders has a bit of a different approach. It's more grassroots. It's less about the structure of the White House and implementing that into his program and saying, I'm going to be the organizer in chief. It's less based on, wealthier and well-educated supporters, and it's more based on uneducated, quote-unquote, working class supporters, young people who want to see the system shaken up because that system doesn't represent them and those like them. Elizabeth Warren's supporters have been at times represented, but maybe aren't right now, and so she's tapping into a different energy. Again, both of them are finding success, and I think that's a good thing. This is showing that out of the top three candidates, two of them are widely recognized as left of center. Bernie more than Liz, but both of them recognized as left of center. And we know this. We saw in the last debate where Bernie and Warren were on stage, and the whole narrative was, well, there'll be a Bernie-Liz showdown as they fight for the progressive lane. But what we saw was just the opposite. They withstood attacks from around the stage on them, from the neoliberals on the stage, and they presented a general, sign of solidarity. They stood up for one another. They agreed with one another. They referenced one another. And at the end of the day, they were both made stronger for it. And it might come down to the fact that if they are really rising and Biden continues to fall, that they'll have to go toe-to-toe. And it's going to be tricky to watch for people who have sympathies for both Warren and Sanders. Might need to happen, but at least at that stage, it'll be a meaningful policy and philosophical debate between two people who I feel are actually working in the best interest of Americans. Now, you might not agree with one or the other, but I feel that at the core, they both have their hearts in the right place. And I think that's important. I don't trust Joe Biden. I don't trust most of the Democratic primaries. Even other progressives, even other candidates that people like from the progressive wing. I don't necessarily trust them. I have real concern with some of their views. Bernie and Warren are the two best on that front. I'm a Bernie guy. I think he's got the far better vision. I am concerned with Warren's flip-flopping from time to time on Medicare for All. She says she supports it, but then she wants to add a choice in, and I don't know exactly where she stands. I know where Bernie stands. But on the whole, I really am hoping that this poll is the sign of things to come, and that Warren and Sanders run away with this thing, and the rest of the field, Biden included, fall to the wayside. Now, there are some caveats here, both for this poll and against it. One, this is just one poll, and especially in a race this big and this long and this complex, you can't just look at one poll or one polling company. You need to look at them all. And the aggregate is still in favor of Biden. The aggregates look good for Biden because on the whole, pollsters have put him with a fairly large lead. It's declined from where it was a few months ago, but the lead is still there. On the other hand, it's important to note here that Monmouth, according to 538, hardly, a pro-Bernie source, has suggested that it is amongst the best pollsters in the country. It's in that top tier. They give it an A+ rating. And so they rank dozens and dozens and dozens of polling companies, and they put Monmouth right at the top. That's encouraging. Another encouraging fact here is this is one of the polling companies that the Democratic Party ranks as their qualifying polls. It's the ones they use to determine who makes debates and who doesn't and what have you. And because this one is there, it shows that they have faith in that poll, which is important. Another one is that it is the most recent poll. And of course, the most recent poll isn't always the correct poll, but if there is a trend emerging, this could be the poll that's capturing that trend. And so all of that adds up to be really positive for Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, negative for Joe Biden, and really negative for other potential hopefuls like Kamala Harris. I think it shows that this is a three-way race, and if the trends continue, it'll be a two-way race between Bernie and Liz. And I think that's a great thing. I've sort of wanted this to just be about those two, to really have a good, left of center debate about what the future of the Democratic Party and the future of America is, between two good candidates who have different visions, but mutual respect and admiration for one another. And I think that's what's going to be the best case scenario for progressives in the United States going forward. A couple other things from this poll that need to be noted. One is that there is some more positive signs for Warren here. It notes that amongst the early states, she has a bit of an edge over Bernie Sanders. According to this poll, she has better results in the earlier states of the primary, whereas Bernie seems to pick up steam going later on. Now, that's a good thing for Bernie Sanders over the long haul, but early momentum can be helpful, so that might be better for Warren overall. We're not sure yet. Another factor here is this is yet another poll tearing down the Bernie bro myth. That myth that Bernie Sanders is supported by white men and people of color don't like him, and Bernie Sanders doesn't get people of color, and his vision it doesn't consider race or gender or what have you. And that's what one of the narratives Hillary Clinton's team used against Bernie Sanders, and they were effective, unfortunately, at perpetuating it back in 2016. Some people still believe it. But this poll shows that Bernie Sanders has high levels of favorability amongst non-white voters. Bernie Sanders' team is not strictly, young white college bros. It is a diverse and multifaceted group of Americans that want progressive change. All in all, this is a pretty impressive poll. It's just one poll. So if you're a Biden supporter, you might well say, well, this is just one poll. The aggregates have us up. And if you're a Sanders and Warren supporter, you might say cautiously, this looks great, but you don't want to let your supporter think that, you're in the driver's seat now and you could take your foot off the gas pedal. This is just the start of a very long race. And I think that it's important to realize that we need to see more polls like this to really declare a trend, in action. But if I wake up today and I see this poll and I'm on Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren's team, I'm really happy. And I'm very scared if I'm on Joe Biden's team. I have to start thinking about what am I going to do, because nothing's working for Joe Biden. The Obama ties aren't working for him. Every time he's in the media, he's making gaffes. For such an establishment guy, he's not even raising a ton of money. I just don't know, what Biden's deal is. What's his policy? What's his hook? Even his wife has to caveat him by saying, well, he might not be the best on any issue, but he's the one who can win. How is that seen as a measure of confident support from your wife when she has to give caveats to why you should be picked? That's not good. So guys, I hope you have a good one. Keep an eye on the polls. Keep an eye on all of them, because they will give you a fuller picture in total. But do keep in mind how this one is spun. Because yes, it's fair to say one poll is just one poll. But watch this one get spun a little bit harder, because it has Bernie effectively in first place, or at least a tie for first place. And often when news is good for Bernie, it either gets ignored or it gets distorted, or both. So keep that in mind. I think you might see that this time. Guys, have a great one. See you next time.